Okay, so the first hand I'm going to comment on is a blind versus blind hand, and I have a lot of chips in this hand. So I start most of these hands. I actually have a lot of chips because I'm basically trying to show chip accumulation, and so I'm trying to show getting, collecting more chips and stuff. And it's very difficult to do that, I think, when you have 20 big blinds. When you have 20 big blinds, as I explained in those quickie videos I did, you're really playing conservative and just looking for spots to jam. But when you have 40, 50 big blinds, I think that's where people have the most difficulty in accumulating chips. So I'm going to show this hand. It's basically, I have a play. Oh, sorry, I hit the wrong button because that's what I do. You can see there's a button raised. So the button has about 35 big blinds start the hand, and he opens, and I just call. One of the reasons I don't 3-bet here is because the hand becomes very difficult to play if the villain 4-bets. I can't really call a 4-bet with this hand, and I'm going to have to play out of position if I do. If I 3-bet and he calls again, I'm giving up position, and I have an okay hand, but a weaker hand. When you just call, though, one of the things that you're doing is you're really narrowing the button's range to really anything that he'd open the button with, which is probably in most cases, somewhere around 70 to 80% of hands. It makes it difficult to play sometimes post-flop because you can't really put them on a hand. Now, you can see the flop comes. I've completely whiffed this flop. It makes it a little difficult, a little easier to play because I'm either bluffing or I'm folding. So I can't really play the hand for value. I don't have anything enough to do that with. So I think, obviously checking on the flop, sometimes checking makes sense because if you lead, the donk lead works sometimes. I've seen it work a lot more in higher stakes, and I'm gonna say this a lot when I show these hands, but my stuff and the things I show really work at the lower stakes tournaments. They're not going to work very well at the higher stakes tournaments. So don't take the stuff from my video and say, oh, I was playing, the 55 rebuy and I tried to do this and the guy saw right through it. A lot of the stuff I do, good players will see right through, and I've said this over and over again in a lot of videos. But you're going to get a standard C-bet here often. And again, it gives me the choice to either bluff, and I could, possibly have the best hand too. I do have ace high. But I really would be playing it as a bluff. So I can either bluff or I can fold. It's really give up on the hand and not play it anymore. So I'm going to actually check call here with the intentions of bluffing on later streets. So I'm basically calling thinking I probably have the best hand, but I'm also going to make a decision to possibly bluff on later streets. So the turn pairs the board, which does a lot of good things because it really narrows down the hands that the villain can continue with here. He has basically a very narrow range here if he bats, and it's going to be likely a bluff or something that he'll fold to aggression. If he has a pair, let's say under the queen, he's obviously going to be afraid of the queen. And if he doesn't have anything at all, which is possible, he's going to be afraid of, anything. Likely I have the best hand if he's afraid of that. The only danger thing is something like a heart draw. So like I played on the turn, he's going to call, and then I'm going to be really confused on the river if an ace doesn't hit, because how am I going to play the hand on the river? If I play aggressively on the turn, how do I play the river? I'm going to probably have to take a bigger chance. And one of the things is I don't like to take a ton of chances in spots like this. But the pot is now, over 2K, which is more than 20% of my stack. So it's definitely something that's worth going after. And you can see on the turn I'm going to lead out. And the reason I choose to lead out here is I'm hoping the villain's going to fold a lot of his range. I'm also taking control of the hand, so it gives me, a lot of times people try to bluff on the river, so they'll call 2 streets and then try to bluff the river, and their hand just doesn't make a lot of sense when they bluff the river. So one of the things I like to do is try to tell a story of a hand that makes sense. So if I had something like King Queen here, leading out on the turn would make sense. If I had a 3, it would make sense too. So there's a lot of options here to lead out here and try to basically take the pot down. Again, I might have the best hand and I'm bluffing with the best hand, but I think, it's still worthwhile to lead out here. And you can see the villain actually raises, which it can mean a whole bunch of things. I don't typically think if the villain has a queen, he's going to raise. And I don't think if they have possibly the only thing he can have is a 3. Otherwise, he's not really going to want to bet me out of the hand. If he has something like pocket 6s or a 3, he might be afraid of the flush draw. The pocket 6s, he wouldn't be afraid of the flush draw, but I don't think he's going to try to bluff me out of the hand here if he has a very big hand.